Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the No Laying Up podcast. My name is Randy. I'm glad you're here. This episode today is near and dear to my heart. It's a full-length conversation with the great Michael Bamberger, author and senior writer for golf.com. If you follow me or know me at all, you know I'm a massive fan of Michael's, both the person and Michael, his work as a writer. In fact, one of his previous books, To the Links Land, which has been somewhat recently reprinted and re-released in honor of its 30th anniversary, is truly among the best golf books ever written, in my opinion. Certainly check that out if you have not read that yet. The occasion behind today's conversation is the release of Michael's newest book, and that's called The Playing Lesson, A Duffer's Year Among the Pros. The book is an homage to George Plimpton's famous book, The Bogeyman, and has Michael crisscrossing the country, playing golf, and relaying his adventures with names you'll recognize and a lot you'll meet for the first time. Like all of Michael's writing, I think it's sharp, it's witty, and it does a great job of revealing basic truths about people and golf. It's just really, really good. Our conversation uses his book as a pathway into a lot of different topics, and I'll say some range well beyond the game of golf. I think Michael's wise and worldly, and so any opportunity I have to sit down with him, I make sure to try to glean some life advice where I can. And just so you know, this conversation, I spoke with Michael in his office at his house in Philadelphia. We have a No Laying Up podcast YouTube channel. So if you're curious, you can watch it over there. I will say this, Michael's office, I think, if you're familiar with him at all, is probably exactly how you imagine it. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. I know I did. It was a real treat to get to sit down with Michael. And we're going to get to it real quick, though. Let me thank one of our sponsors today, and that's Holderness and Bourne. Holderness and Bourne, their new late summer collection just dropped. It features, among other things, the Hamilton hoodie. TC was adamant. I say the Hamilton hoodie is fire. He's been wearing it since it arrived. And they have a lot of new colorways. The Ivy colorway in particular has been a hot seller. It's a nice soft shade of green. I think it'll really work well as we move into fall. And then a lot of cotton styles. Peruvian long staple cotton polos. That's in the Nagel, the Neville, and the Hunter. They're truly as classic and timeless as it gets. And just a couple of favorites of mine with an eye towards fall. The Ashby vest, particularly the heather navy color. I wear that a lot. It goes with a ton of stuff. The Ward sweater, I think, is really nice for fall. The Kennedy pullover. And then the other thing, they have the buyer's duffel bag is just great for weekend trips. And it comes with an embroidery option. So it would be perfect gift as well. You can find all of this plus a lot more at hbgolf.com. Use code NLU10, NLU10 at checkout. That code and our TRAP10 code are the only codes anywhere on the market for Holderness and Bourne. So again, check them out, hbgolf.com. Get your style set as fall approaches. We thank them for being a sponsor of this podcast. And now, without further ado, my chat with the great Michael Bamberger. And this is a special treat. I am inside the office of Michael Bamberger, senior writer, golf.com, author of 9 books and a play, I might add, and a play. And I'm here to hang out with Michael. The occasion for this is to talk and chat about his new book, The Playing Lesson, A Duffer's Year Among the Pros. It was released just a couple months ago. It's available wherever books are sold. I would encourage folks to support their local independent booksellers. And Michael, first of all, welcome. It's so nice to catch up with you. How are you today?
Great. It's nice to have you here. Now, I just introduced you to my wife under your birth name. So am I to call you Phil or Randy over the course of this interview?
It's the eternal question, truly. Whatever is easiest for you.
I would say Randy does not come naturally to me at all.
So let's go with Phil.
Okay.
For anybody listening that is not aware, I'm not sure how you wouldn't be aware, my real name is Phil. So yes, please call me Phil.
Well, how do most of your listeners and your audience, how would they think of you?
I think probably Randy.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, it's an interesting thing. It's an old college nickname, and sometimes I think, man, if I could just go back. One, why did I pick Randy? It's a long story, but Randy was a name I chose and ultimately stuck as a nickname. And then 2, fast forward to when we were starting No Laying Up. Why did I feel like I needed to write under a pen name, an alias, a nickname? Why could I have just chosen my real name? It would make life a little bit more simpler today. But here we are.
Did you play basketball under Randy or under Phil?
Under Phil.
Okay, like if you saw you on a roster sheet at Washington and Lee.
Always
Phil.
Always Phil. And I always introduce myself as Phil, but I figure people listening, they know me as Randy, so that's what I tend to go with on No Laying Up
This
channels.
came up just the other day with our daughter because we were talking about the film director M. Night Shyamalan, and he assigned himself the nickname Night in college when he was at NYU. Do you know that name, M. Night Shyamalan?
Yeah, of course.
But his given name is Manoj. So anybody who knows him from his private life, his family life, it's Manoj. Anybody who knew him in high school, it's Manoj. But anyone who knows him in NYU or through Hollywood, it's Night. Or as people often say, M. Night. But he just invented it.
Well, that was one of your books.
I wrote a book about this guy.
I also want to mention To the Lynx Land was recently republished, re-released. Congratulations on that. I think the last time you and I did a podcast, it was about your book, The Second Life of Tiger Woods.
Mm-hmm.
That was, several years ago now. But yeah, like I said, the occasion for today's visit, your new book, The Playing Lesson, A Duffer's Year Among the Pros. Michael, what I like and truly what I think the genius of your writing is, while it's about golf, it's never just about golf. I think invariably you touch on life, the human condition, you find the beauty in it, and that's what I really, really appreciate. And so I think in the vein of that, for people listening, I think this conversation, we certainly will tie it to your book, but I'd love to go in all kinds of different directions, if that's all right with you.
Of course. It's flattering.
Okay. I have to ask a question, though, before we get started, and it goes back to The Second Life of Tiger Woods. On the dedication page, there's an inscription that says, and I'm quoting here, "This book is dedicated with gratitude to MD251MC." And underneath that, it says, "This is a riddle for any reader with, quote, a modest prize awaiting anybody who can decode those 7 characters." Michael, I kid you not, I've thought about this more than I'd like to admit over the ensuing 3-4 years, whatever it's been. For the life of me, I don't know what it is, and I'm dying to know if this modest prize has been awarded to anybody.
It has been, yeah. There's been about maybe 3 or 7 people, somewhere in that range, who have figured out over the years, and they have received a modest prize. And lawyers being lawyers, when the book was getting vetted to come out, the lawyer actually asked, the lawyer was the same lawyer who worked with Bob Woodward on his books. He was super thorough. He was a guy that Simon Schuster used a lot for its books, and Woodward is a Simon Schuster editor. And one of the things he asked us, what is the value of the modest prize? And I said, I really haven't decided. He said, it matters because if it's over a certain threshold, then federal law kicks in over prize giving. Yeah. And I don't know the details of it at all, but whatever the threshold is, for anybody who thinks that they can figure it out, it doesn't meet the threshold of going to federal prize. Yes, people have figured it out.
So there's more than one prize. This is still ongoing. If anybody is still able to figure it out, you're still awarding prizes.
Generally speaking, it's been a book off the shelf here, not necessarily one of my own, but yeah, it's pretty modest.
I only ask because I won't ask you then to reveal it. I'll ask you in confidence just to set my own mind at ease.
Interesting.
Yeah. All right. I had to get that out of the way.
Okay.
Can
I just start for one quick thing about something you said right at the beginning?
Please.
Years ago, like when I was in high school, the New York Times is always a big thing in our house. And reading the letters to the editor, this woman wrote in about a story that ran in the sports section of the New York Times, and the woman wrote, "Do you realize that in the course of this story, you never identified what sport you're writing about?" And that made such an impression on me. And it was like about women's field hockey or whatever it was. It was like, there's a broad interest in golf or baseball or politics or movies or anything. But if you want to bring in the world, you better be aware that people don't necessarily focus on this as intensely as you might, you, Phil, or me, Michael. Like earlier, we were talking about Jake Knapp's caddy, and he's had a caddy change. Well, what are the chances of somebody knowing about that caddy change? Close to zero. Or I'll go to a cocktail party and they still think Joe LaCava is caddying, or they think Steve Williams is still caddying for Tiger, and they think Tiger's still playing. I'm like, no, Tiger hasn't played in years. They go, oh, really? What's up with him? I said, you better get another drink because I can't get into it. It's too much.
Right.
But anyway, so it's nice of you to comment on that it's about other things. But that's woman's letter to the editor made an impact on me in, I would say, 1977.
Well, it's very true. I don't mean to overly flatter you this early in the interview, but that is it's the beauty of golf, and I truly think that's the beauty of your writing. And I think it's the same thing with your new book. And so let's just start here with the playing lesson. It's inspired, as you say, by a book by George Plimpton, his book, The Bogeyman. I think for any readers, could you quickly just talk about who George was, and did you know George? How did that book specifically come to influence this new book of yours?
Would you have known the name George Plimpton prior to this?
I think in very just passing. It's a name that I think I've heard, read, but I couldn't tell you much biographical detail.
Like some people, you'd have to be even older than you are, Phil, to know the name. His most famous piece ever was a cover story about a phenomenal right-handed pitcher, maybe left-handed pitcher that the Mets had signed. And the pitcher's name was Sid Finch. And Sid Finch...
I do know Sid Finch.
You know about Sid Finch.
I remember reading that in Sports Illustrated. Yes.
Did you? Okay.
Yes.
And Sid Finch came to the Mets training camp with a bag over his head because he grew up in an orphanage in England, was educated at Harvard, and had a 168 mile or something like that fastball. And it was an April Fool's Day issue for Sports Illustrated. So that's probably George Plimpton's best known piece. But one of George's main things as a writer was to do an activity and write about it. And one of the things I did was he played football for the Detroit Lions, one set of downs in a scrimmage. But he wrote a whole book about it called Paper Lion that was later turned into a movie, same name. And then for his next trick after that, he got himself into some PGA Tour Pro-Ams and wrote this very funny book called The Bogeyman about it. And I read that book in high school and made a huge impression on me. And I never knew George Plimpton, but I had some conversations with him over the years. And our mutual editor, Joe Fufari Adler, he and I were playing golf a couple summers ago. And he said, nobody's done the Plimpton thing since. And I knew where he was going with sold. Yeah, I would love to try to do that. So that was the impulse, the impetus for this book.
So for folks that have not picked up the book yet and would encourage everybody to do so, in the best way you can, kind of explain the premise then with George and the Bogeyman. What is it you go about setting off to do with your experience?
Well, what George did was he got you inside the ropes because it's unimaginable. Now, of course, baseball has the fantasy camp where people go down to spring training and they sort of hang out with former players. But the Pro-Am is a unique thing in golf, and particularly a Pro-Am where you're playing and your pro's playing for keeps, which does happen like at the old Bob Hope tournament, now called the American Express, and the Bing Crosby tournament, and he played in both those events. The pro is playing for real, and you're inside the ropes with the pro. So you were really seeing the game in a way that you can't imagine another sport actually allowing. It's such an intimate range. So Plimpton did that very successfully, and I thought all these years later, I've had the chance to see a lot of golf really up close. Like I would say the difference between seeing golf through being a caddy for a tour player and being a reporter and being a fan, I would say it's night and day actually. And for the amateur participant in Pro-Am, it's sort of the same thing. You sort of get to know the pro in a different way. So that was the starting point, and then it turned into a lot of different things, and this is part of the charm of the Bogeyman. Plimpton is a generous, 18 handicapper. He's probably a lot worse a lot worse than that. But the idea is, can you get better? Can you actually get better at something? So that becomes part of the goal in this book as well.
So you drive around. Driving's a big theme of the book, road tripping. I want to ask you about that. And as you said, you participate, take part in a number of different pro-ams across golf, all professional golf. You have the PGA Tour, of course. You have a Live Pro-Am, LPGA. What else? A Senior Champions Tour Pro-Am, and
Epson Tour.
For
those who don't know, can you describe what the Epson Tour is for the listeners?
Well, I assume most listeners probably know the Korn Ferry Tour, and so the Epson Tour is the LPGA equivalent. It's
Perfect.
Kind of the AAA, if you will, of LPGA golf. That's all to say, beyond just playing in the Pro-Am, and certainly you meet pros and you meet different people, but you introduce us to a wide range of characters. You go off on tangents. It's just a wonderful book. So I want to explore what I think are some of the big themes. There's always an eternal push-pull. Michael, I don't want to give away too much because that's the beauty of picking up and reading your book. But I hope to entice people with enough to really set off their curiosity and pick it up for yourself, pick it up for a person in your life who loves golf. I think we need to level set on your golf. So talk to me. I guess we can go back to the beginning of the playing lesson, if it's much different than where you are today. But what is your handicap? How much golf do you play? Let's set a baseline for listeners about Michael Bamberger's golf.
Okay. Now, it just so happens I had Annika Sorenstam on the phone yesterday for a piece that I'm doing. And she's a member at Augusta National. And we were talking about her best rounds ever at Augusta National. And long before she was a member, when she was at the height of her powers as a player, she played it from the championship tees on a windy day, and she broke par. Like, that is astounding.
Yes.
So we were talking about how difficult Augusta National is. So just to describe my own game for a minute, like, it looks more competent than it is. And the reason I say that is, like, and I said this to Annika the other day, and I'll tell you her response in a minute. Like, everybody who follows golf knows what Augusta National is because they watch it on TV. So let's just say the first hole. It's a 100-yard wide fairway. You can't miss it. And the fairway's hot. It's going to roll up there somewhere. And then you're going to hit a hybrid or a 6-iron, wherever it is, and you're going to get it near the green. So now you've taken 2 shots. The chances of it getting in the hole in 5 from there for me are close to 0 because I'm probably going to take 2 chips and 4 putts, and that's a lot. So I said to Annika the other day, just yesterday, I said, Annika, like, you can get greenside in regulation, but then try to make a par or bogey from there. And she's like, yeah, totally. So that's sort of, I'm a terrible short putter. I'm a bad chipper. I invented a club to try to help me with my chipping. I invented a putter to try to help me with my yipping. But it's a struggle. But I can get it up in the air. I can hit an okay distance. It's been this way for a long, long time. And I have very much enjoyed this quest to try to get better, or at this point at age 65, to hold on to what I have. And Phil and I were talking about swimming and other activities.
Well, you're evading. What's the handicap? Because I know
my handicap's
you
12,
keep
and
a
I'll
handicap.
break. Yeah,
okay.
And if I'm playing well, I'll certainly break 90. And a few times in my life, I've broken 80. And I can go along well. I can play 6 holes and even par. But then I'll make a triple. So probably a lot of people can relate the same.
What do you have golf goals? What are your goals at this point?
My number one goal is to start with the ball that I finish.
I love that.
Good. Why, do you find yourself doing the same thing?
Well, it's part of. Well, I'm cutting you off here. No, I've tried to simplify my goals into don't 3-putt, no penalty shots, which I think kind of inherently, finish with the ball you started with. And what's my other one? Oh, no double chips. If you're around the green, get it on in one. Hank Haney always used to preach that. And I feel like it's a simplified way to just take 3 goals to the golf course every time I play.
That's perfect. Now, at my level, if I have no penalty shots, no 3-putts, which never happens, and no 2 chips, which never happens, I will shoot 85 or better.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's a great way to approach the game. And in general, having simple, manageable goals is great. I would say my single most significant goal is to stay really engaged through the round, and that half minute that you're going to spend preparing and playing the shot, to be thoroughly engaged in it, which is definitely part of the deep beauty of the game, is our chance to get lost in this pursuit that really is mind over matter until you let go of the mind and it turns into matter. Like, can you make the swing that your mind has already sort of planned for you to make?
But that's all to say you're not thinking to yourself, I need to get into single digit handicap. You don't consider golf goals that way necessarily?
No.
Okay.
No. I consider golf goals more joy of the game and the joy in being in control of your emotions and your thoughts. And I think that's really what I've just described is really why 50 years of playing, why the game still has such a hold on me, because that's just, to me, like writing or reading or some of the almost any pursuit really is this. Even shoveling, like if you shovel your driveway, just the idea of something's in your mind and then you make it happen.
I get that way folding laundry.
Yeah.
I do the laundry, and you start with this unkempt pile of clothes, and by the end, I love the satisfaction of seeing everything folded and kind of put in place.
Yeah.
It's a little zen that way, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Quick interruption here to give a shout out to our friends at The Stack. I know you guys have heard me talk a lot about this product. Just did a workout this morning. It's fantastic. It's a wonderful way to start the day. If you're an aging golfer, or if you're a golfer that's ever lacked speed in any way, or you're just looking to get some kind of improvement on your buddies, there's so many great cases you can listen to out there about how this training program will help you tangibly improve your strokes on the golf course, particularly your tee shots. It is an easy-to-use program. You can go to thestacksystem.com/NLU to learn more information. You can use code NOLAYINGUP to get 10% off of your bundle on the website. But you can do the workouts anywhere, on the road, in your backyard. It takes maybe 15 minutes to warm up, 15 to 20 minutes to do the workouts. They're fun to do. It's gamified. I look forward to doing it every single week. And if not, if the distance swing speed version is not for you, there's a wedge version that's going to help you dial in your wedge distances. You can feel yourself improving as you go through it. It's really, really fun. And there's a putting one. You can learn all kinds of things like, am I better with this mallet putter? Am I better with this blade putter? The saw grip, whatever it might be. This program is going to help you get better at golf. Thestacksystem.com/NLU, code NOLAYINGUP. This is a great tool for anyone that has limited practice time. If you want to use that time to get better at golf, Stacksystem.com/NLU, code NOLAYINGUP. Back to Mr. Big and Mr. Bamberger.
Well, you spoke about emotions. What's the most upset you've ever been on the golf course?
Well, unfortunately, it comes immediately to mind. I'm not proud of it at all. In Cooperstown, I love baseball, but I don't follow as closely as I used to at all. But when Christine and I were courting, we went to Cooperstown. I was playing the leather stocking course. Have you ever been up there?
No.
It's a lovely course. And they have this 18th tee that you take like a suspension bridge to walk out to this 18th tee. I never carry a lot of balls, and I duck 4 in a row into the lake. I had no more golf balls left. I'm out on this island, and I lost it. It's like, how, like with the last ball.
What does losing it mean? What is?
I'd rather not say. It wasn't pretty. I didn't break any clubs.
Okay. Some profanities, I'm sure.
Profanity, red of face, and I was a lot younger, and it was a bad scene. Our marriage, or then we were probably engaged, survived it. But over the years, I've become much more mellow, really, on the course. It's not that much that upsets me anymore. My friend Mike Donald, who played the tour for years, he would say of me or anybody, who gets really upset, like, you're not good enough to get that pissed off.
Right.
Like the first time I heard him say that, yeah, that's totally correct.
Yeah. One thing that you mentioned in the book that I really connected with, you speak of your, what's the right word for it? You speak of how much you enjoy playing golf in relative silence. And as somebody that's naturally introverted. That just resonated with me. I'm so curious though how you go about. Are you able to message? I'm sure your good friends know this about you just over time. How are you able to kind of convey that, or do you convey that to new playing partners or caddies without coming across as rude?
That is really a funny question. A friend had a daughter, and the daughter was getting married. And the kid was a really nice kid. I took him out for golf. And we both hit 2 shots off of 1. This is at the Philadelphia Cricket Club. I'm lucky enough to be a member. And I hit it left, and he hit it right. So he walks with me over to my ball. And said, I'm delighted to have you out here, but let me just say how this goes. I walk to my ball, and you walk to yours. He's like, okay, I understand. And then we played in 2 hours and 50 minutes, which is plenty of time if you got the golf course to yourself. For a 2-ball to get around an 18-hole course, 250. You're not racing. You're just playing. You're just playing golf. The other thing, well, that's what I do. I proceed to my golf ball by myself. If I'm with a caddy, I take clubs. I proceed to my golf. I'll pull 2 clubs that I think I might need. And by the way, if those clubs aren't the right clubs, they become the right clubs. Just figure something out. It's part of the fun anyhow. So I'm always advancing to my ball by myself.
Yeah.
And I hope this isn't getting ahead of yourself, but there's a little moment in the book where I'm playing. Phil and I were just at this 9-hole course where I play on a golf called St. Martin's, and I'm playing in this match. You may remember this part of the book.
Of course, I know exactly what you're going to say.
Should I get into it?
Yeah, please.
And
please.
I'm and I hit a wildly crazy bad tee shot, and I hit a good recovery shot, and I've got a long lag putt just to get it close to try to 2-putt for a par, and I hit this beautiful lag putt. Now I've got maybe 5 feet for par, so I'm in the hole, and I'm standing in the back of the green. I'm just in this reverie, and the guy says, "Come on in here. We're in this together." I'm like, "Holy fuck." We're not in this together. I'm doing my thing. But now you've killed my mojo vibe of, I don't even know what you're talking about. We're in this together. We're playing a match. What do you mean we're in this together? It's not a group activity.
Well, no, we can have a beer afterwards.
Yeah. But anyway, he totally got in my head. And I yipped my 5-footer. He made his 4.
Do you think that was that calculated? Do you think that guy knew exactly
think so. I don't think it was. Not that one can ever really know.
Sure.
I just think it was in his personality type.
Okay.
There's a salesman personality type in life and in golf, of course, where they think it's communal. You see that with reporters too. You have reporters who are like, yeah, we asked them that after the round. And like John Feinstein was a friend of mine who died earlier this year. Like John was really a reporter's reporter. He never asked a question in a press conference because one of his things was, I don't share. Yeah. And I admired that.
Yeah.
I guess in my own way, I'm sort of the same way.
Okay, well, let's switch themes a little bit. I appreciate you sharing that about your personal golf. A big theme I mentioned earlier in this book is the idea of a road trip. You do a lot of driving from point A to point B. I know it's something that you really enjoy. What does it take for you to fly instead of drive? Are you the type of person, if it's at all feasible to drive, is that what you're opting for? Talk to me about your mindset with getting behind the wheel and doing a true road trip.
Yeah, I love to get in the car, and I'm reluctant to fly. Flying's boring and driving's interesting. It's sort of like the starting point for me. Driving's your own schedule. Flying is somebody else's schedule. Driving, you're in control. Flying, somebody else is in control. So, if I like to visit my friend Ryan French in Alpena, Michigan, one could, I live in Philadelphia, so one could fly Philadelphia to Detroit and then fly Detroit to Alpena. If I had to fly, I would fly Philadelphia to Detroit and then drive the rest. But better yet would be just to drive the whole thing. Yeah. I've done both with Ryan, but I just think you read what you want to read when you're you listen to what you want to listen to. You talk with who you want to talk to. You meet people. You're much more likely to meet people along the way, And I just think it's superior in every way. So for me to drive to Augusta is nothing. And of course, our kids are grown now, so I don't have that pressure of, getting back so quickly. So even like a simple trip to Augusta, which is only 12 hours from here, to break them in 2 days and spend the night in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, and find golf courses and driving ranges and little restaurants and little ice cream shops along the way. Just a joy for me. And one quick point here. My first job after college was on the newspaper Martha's Vineyard called the Vineyard Gazette. And when I was there in 1982, a book, I'm bringing it up because I would definitely recommend this book to people. It's called Blue Highways by a writer named William Least Heat Moon. And he just got in his car and started driving, or in a van in this case, and he slept in the van. And I remember really being taken, it was sort of like, I don't know, it's a classic road trip book. And so I was in my early 20s when I read that. And that's been, a lot of the stuff that happened to me at a young age, high school and college and after college, has stayed with me ever since. And that was one of the things that got me down this path of much preferring to be in my own car.
I imagine you have some hard and fast rules, whether you think of them as hard and fast rules. I don't imagine you being like a fast food eater on the road. I got to think you're stopping at diners, small town restaurants whenever you can. I'm curious what the must-dos for Michael Bamberger on a road trip are. What are you listening to? Is it music? Is it podcasts? Is it nothing? What's kind of set the scene on a typical road trip, if you will?
Okay, that's really an interesting question. No one's ever posed that question to me before. Well, this is only new since the advent of Siri. But if you are anywhere, so if you're conscious about what you eat, and I would say that I am, if you say to Siri, show me Greek restaurants near here, well, there's usually only, wherever you are, you're in Richmond, Virginia, wherever you may be, there's only going to be one, and it's going to be a family-owned restaurant.
Yeah.
And the beauty of the Greek restaurant is that it's family-owned, and that they're doing their own shopping, and that they buy the fish that day, and that they're warming up the pita. They may have made it themselves, the feta. Like the other day I did this, I was in Clifton, New Jersey, and I said to Sarah, show me Greek restaurants. And beautiful piece of salmon came with French fries and spinach. And now I'm not proud of what I'm about to say, but I put Parmesan cheese on my spinach. And I said to the guy, would you have Parmesan cheese by any chance? And the guy said, wouldn't you prefer feta? I'm like, yeah, definitely. That would be way, way better. So like, the Greek restaurant is a very healthy way to eat. So that would be one of my things. You can on a long drive, you can expose yourself to a lot of music. Like I'm well versed in the Allman Brothers, but only to a point. And like, if you got a 10-hour drive, you can go deeper and deeper. Or like the guitarist T-Bone Burnett is a friend of mine, is a remarkable person. But I don't listen, he's played, for those who don't know, T-Bone Burnett is a well-known producer and guitarist, and he's played with Elton John and Bob Dylan and many legends over the years, but he's done a lot of his own music. So once on a long drive, I just said to Siri, or whatever they call it, play T-Bone Burnett. Well, it turns out there's hours and hours of T-Bone Burnett recordings out there. Would you know that name, T-Bone Burnett?
No.
Okay. So that's a deep pleasure. Just one quick thing happens to bring up Brian French again. I have written about this before, but not too many people would have found it. People fall in love with music as kids. Often you're in high school, you're in college, and that musical love usually never dissipates over time. Like, who was your favorite band in high school?
Well, I think that's right. And I find myself listening to a lot of the same stuff I did at that point. An example would be OAR, of a Revolution. We listened to a ton in high school and college, and I've started listening to it. It just takes you back, right? I think that's the beauty of music. It puts you in a place and a time, and it's very unique.
I didn't know OAR until recently. Someone your age told me about them, and I did just that. I started listening to OAR, and it's a great sound. So there's a well-known band named Jefferson Airplane from the 60s and the 70s. And then two guys broke off from Jefferson Airplane and found a band called Hot Tuna. And those guys' names are Jorma Kaukonen and Jack Cassidy. And I was driving up to see Ryan French in Alpena. Ryan French, I think a lot of people will probably know him as Monday Q Info. That's the very
popular account that he runs. So,
as you are
yes.
to Big Randy, he is to Monday Q info. That's
Yes.
exactly right. So I'm not good at electronic things and anything.
That
really.
doesn't shock me, Michael.
Okay. And so I roll into Alpena, and the phone has died, and now we're going to go play golf. And I was listening to Hot Tuna on the way there, and there's this old Chuck Berry song called "Talking About You," and Hot Tuna does a version of it. And I was listening to this on the way in, and then the phone died. So then I charged it while we were playing, and then Ryan and I went out and played, and then we came in, and then there was the girls, like junior high school, or maybe the high school girls, Alpena High School team was practicing on the practice tee, and Ryan and I were in the parking lot, and the windows were down, and suddenly, out of nowhere, Hot Tuna's "Talking About You," this old Chuck Berry song, started playing on the driving range. And I said to Ryan, that is unbelievable. What are the chances of these girls in 2023 listening to the same music that I listened to in high school? And then Ryan said, Michael, your car is still on. Your phone is obviously just recharged. And the music that you were listening to on the way in is now playing and flooding the driving range with it. So anyway, a long-winded answer to your question about musical taste. But that's really one of the great, great joys of modern life, is how easy it is to get access to all sorts of music. And one of the joys of driving as well. And then, of course, podcasts have become a thing as well. And I don't listen to podcasts at home, but in the car.
Okay.
In the car I do. So
just speaking of road trips, what's a favorite route of yours? If anybody listening has an itch to just make a nice long road trip, what immediately springs to mind for you, at least in the United States here? What's one of your favorite road trips that you can remember?
You know, I'll just cite something that Christine and I recently did. So I'm lucky enough to cover the Masters every year. And then Christine came down after this year's Masters. And I went from Augusta to Columbia, South Carolina, and then I picked up Christine, and we were in my green Mini, and which Phil and I went earlier today. It's got 140,000 miles on it, runs like a top, and we went to Nashville, Memphis, Birmingham, Montgomery. I'm sure we were in Aiken at some point, Asheville, and maybe Richmond on this trip. But anyway, it was really a civil rights tour of
zigzagging across.
It was a lot of zigzagging, and but it turns out, of course, in Memphis, there's the Lorraine Motel or hotel where King was assassinated. All these cities have great monuments to the civil rights movement, and I would highly recommend anybody has a chance to do this sort of thing. And one of our things, maybe more my thing than Christine's thing, is travel without much of an agenda. Like, I'm really, this has become a joke, but it's not really. I'm very truly commitment phobic because I want to really be open to surprise. So, I will often just, make a hotel reservation that morning for that night, because you want to sort of just see where the spirit takes you. And I talk about T-Bone, and I compare notes about this occasionally. It's like this over planning of life and this over structuring of life. It sucks the air out of life, I think.
Yeah.
And I think, to me, and I know this is a luxury of where I am in my life, but to be open to surprise and whim is just really like a great joy. Like yesterday, our son Ian and Christine and I, we were swimming at lucky enough to be a member of a club with a pool, Philadelphia Cricket Club, and we were planning to see Freaky Friday. And then, like, in the last minute, we had a heart change and we decided to see this art house movie instead. And we really knew nothing about it. It's set in Rhodesia in 1980. You might know it. Let's not go to the dogs tonight. I think that's the name of the movie.
Huh.
And it's a total art house movie. And it's a woman named Fuller. It's based on her memoir. We knew nothing about it. And it's a totally mesmerizing, beautiful movie. Like, the only thing I knew about it was that it was playing at a theater that shows reliable movies.
Yeah.
But anyway, so it was just like a spur of the moment thing. But even like in interviewing, like, I like to know a little bit about a subject, but I don't like to overdo it, because I want to be really open to surprise. I just read a book by the writer Susan Orlean. Would you know that name?
I do know the name.
And her best-known book is called The Orchid Thief, but she's written this absolutely incredible memoir of her writing life. It's called Joyride, which, you know, a name I can really relate to. And like when she's writing this book, I feel like she was writing to me, because one of her things is to really be open to surprise and prepare, but not over-prepare.
Yeah.
So you don't feel like you know everything. And I think that's been a gift to me as a reporter, is feeling like I'm inept, I don't know anything, and I'm going to puzzle my way through it. And I think what, you know, to your question about about road trips are sort of the same sort of thing.
Is there a road trip that you haven't done that you would love to do?
Well, we were talking about New Zealand earlier, and it's not
Yeah.
a typical road trip. I've never been to New Zealand, never been to Australia, but New Zealand especially really appeals to me. But really anywhere. Like if I was in Austin and was going to fly to Dallas, to just look at a map and figure out some back road way.
Because that's another thing. Yeah, I'm sure you try to avoid just the major freeway arteries as much as possible.
Yeah. The
Get
name
on
of
the
this
back
book,
roads.
Yeah, the name of this book that I mentioned earlier, I don't know if I mentioned the name earlier, William Lee Seamoon's, the book's called Blue Highways.
And that's in your book as well, for
Yes.
anybody looking for that reference.
Yeah.
Too.
So Blue Highways, I was really not aware of this until reading the book, but if you look like an old Rand McNally map, you know, I don't know what color they use for the interstates, but the Blue Highways are these two-lane country roads, often to take you from one town to the next. It might have originally been horse trails, the Blue Highways. But yeah, always interesting. I had an experience just last year. I've traveled a lot in Florida over the years, but I took Blue Highways, or back roads, really, from, where was I? I was in St. Augustine, and I was trying to get to somewhere on the West Coast. And like, you actually couldn't believe that you were in Florida in 2024 on these roads that I was in, because it was orange groves and horse farms and little towns and miles and miles and miles where you saw nothing but maybe a Ford truck passing you.
Yeah. Well, I think road trips is a decent enough segue to talk about pro golf. Pro golf being, of course, a theme throughout the book. And I want to pull a quote. This is from page 136 of your book, and you're speaking about men's pro golf of an older variety. You say, quote, "It was primitive and great and not complicated." And that just really struck me, and I'd love to drill down on that a little bit. And I guess where I'll start is, was there ever a world of possibility that men's pro golf specifically could have stayed like that? Or was it always due to be overly and optimally commercialized and built up as big as possible?
Interesting question. One of my favorite people in golf is Curtis Strange. For those who don't know, he won back-to-back U.S. Opens in '88 and '89. And he was on Ryder Cup teams. He captained Ryder Cup team. And we were together somewhere in a grow room, and golf's on TV, and the guys analyzing the golf swing. Tiger, and Curtis has done a lot of golf on TV as well. And Curtis turns to me and says, "When did the golf swing get so complicated?" And it really doesn't need to be so complicated. Or if, like, you know, prior to talking to Annika yesterday, I was looking at some of her highlight reel stuff. It's like, that swing is so simple. It's profoundly simple and great and rhythmic and beautiful. I think what happened was that the equipment changed, and the golfer and the swing changed with it. So I think when you had a small wooden head and a steel shaft, and you had the relatively soft blotted ball, or really very soft blotted ball. For those who don't know anything about the blotted ball, it was almost so soft that you could almost put your thumbnail into it. That's how soft the surface was, and it really did curve a lot more. I think the player had to actually use more athletic. I wouldn't even say think. I would say you could almost say for sure had to use more athletic intuition.
Yeah.
For how to propel the ball to a distant target. And that required athleticism over technique, really, your own personal stamp on your swing. So I think as equipment evolved, and then the golfer evolved with it, like, for instance, if you look at Jeff Ogilvy winning that U.S. Open at Winged Foot versus Bryson DeChambeau winning that U.S. Open at Winged Foot, those are radically different games.
Yeah.
And kind of, to me, an insult like you're hurting Winged Foot. Winged Foot wasn't, in my opinion, this is not to criticize Bryson DeChambeau and for Bryson to figure out a way to shoot the lowest score for 72 holes. That's his job, and he did it beautifully. But it wasn't beautiful to watch because it wasn't what Tillinghast intended for that golf course to be played. To drive it as far as you can, don't care if you're in the rough or not, and then hit some kind of hard wedge that stops. That's not what Tillinghast meant to be that course to be. But that's what happened to the game because the equipment got out of control, in my opinion. So, to your answer, I think the change in swing technique came about because of the equipment changes.
You don't really put on a prognosticator hat in the book, but I am curious what you think the future of men's pro golf looks like. I know there's some ball rollback stuff on the horizon, potentially. We're yet to see kind of how all that shakes out. But I guess, are you optimistic that the men's pro game, does it need to get back to what it was? Or is that, are we just kind of old men reminiscing on how it was in our day?
It's very interesting here to say that because, you're a lot younger than I, and I would not ever consider someone 40-ish.
I was trying to be, I didn't want to just call you an
everyone loves the era in which they came up.
Of course.
The great actor William Hurt had a former wife named Beth Hurt, and I met her along the way. And she said, regarding how people dress, they dress in the way in which they were happiest in their lives. And I'm not going to go too deep down that road, but I've become super attached to these old-timey golf shirts that they're cotton. I much prefer cotton to polyester. I prefer the stiff collar, prefer 4-pot. And of course, they have been making, they made them prominently in the 70s to the 80s. And now I've got to go on eBay to find them. And by the way, if anybody goes down this path, I'm hesitant to have even brought this up because now I'm going to have competition for these shirts. But there's a thing called NWT. Do you know what that stands for?
No.
Well, I wouldn't know this either until this new hobby of mine of hunting for golf shirts. It means new with tags.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm not buying secondhand golf shirts because we know what happens, with men on golf courses. But anyway, so the same thing happens. I fell into baseball in the 70s. We were talking about the Cincinnati Reds, the team that you grew up with. For me, it was the New York Mets in like 69. So you say names like Bob Gibson, Tom Seaver, and Steve Carlton. They are absolutely magical names to me, and they will never, ever be duplicated. But there are people your age and people much younger, and they're going to cite, of course, the pitchers of their era who are the dominant pitchers, and it's totally understandable. Having said all that, I grew up in the greatest generation of golfers ever because I got Big Jack, Tom Watson, Jack Nicklaus, Lee Trevino, Tony Jacklin, Seve Ballesteros, Bern Harlanger, Sandy Lyle, Ian Woosnam, an absolute total murderer's row from, let's say, the early 70s through the early 90s. And it will never be duplicated for the range of personality, the paths that these people had into golf in the first place. So I consider myself very lucky. Now there are people your age and younger than you, and they feel that way. And I've met these people, and I admire them. They feel that way about Phil and Tiger, of course. That's totally understandable. But they even feel that way about Ricky Fowler and Jordan Spieth. And they feel that way about, Jake Knapp and Max Homa. So I think people are always going to love their era.
I guess the game itself, though, I do think there's merit to even when I was younger and first getting into golf, it just seemed like you had guys that you had different body shapes, different body sizes. You had different golf swings. You had different shapes to the golf ball. You had guys hit it high, you had guys hit it low. I guess there was a lot more variety, it seemed like, in pro golf before this modernization of equipment that we see today. And it feels like today everything's a lot more similar than anything is unalike. But I don't know if you would agree with that. I don't know if, again, that's just me remembering things how I want to remember them. I don't have a good answer for that, but I do think there's something to be said about it. I think golf is at its best when there are many different ways to go about getting the ball in the hole, and this swing can look different than that swing, and this ball flight can look different than that ball flight. It just seems like anymore today, everything's just optimized to launch pretty much the same and hit it as far as you can and kind of wedge on as much as possible. And I think there's some beauty and there's some inherent interest that, for me, has disappeared.
I feel that I completely agree with that assessment, except for on the body type. I remember when Tiger won that Masters by 12, his first major as a pro, wins by 12, and he's probably about 6'2", and Vijay was playing great golf then, Ernie, Davis Love. And I thought golf was really going to go to being a big man's game. And then to see Rory McIlroy play at the level that he's played and shows you that it's really not that it's really not true. So I'm not so sure for body type, and I think golf's lucky that it can draw. I think Rory McIlroy is an example. I mean, I don't know what they call Rory McIlroy, but I know I'm a little over 6 feet. I feel like I tower over him. Is he 5'7" or 5'8"?
I think he's listed as 5'9" probably.
But I don't think he's anything like that. So that shows you that it is possible. But to the broader point, they hit it as hard as they can. They almost all hit it as hard as they can. And as you say, they're trying to launch it as high as they can. But, I read on golf.com the other day in a James Colgan story that CUS's ratings were through the roof this year. I was actually surprised to see it because to me, the game is not as interesting as it was, and the golfers themselves and the personality types are not as interesting. They're still interesting because golf's very, very challenging, and it's a distinct personality type that's going to have enough OCD to get good enough to play at that level, but not as interesting as what you were describing earlier.
You drew a connection, having spent some time, we mentioned, on the women's side of professional golf, and you made a comment that the LPGA today feels much more like what the PGA Tour used to feel like 40, 50 years ago. I guess I interpreted that as, and I agree with you if this is what you had in mind, it feels like a closer knit community, more of one big group traveling together. There's more opportunities to, I don't think a lot of players do drive from stop to stop. Nelly Korda did famously, what was it, a couple years, she made a point to drive between some stops. But I know I think that's one of the reasons why I feel such a strong attraction and interest in the women's game. And I'm just curious how that realization or what some of those maybe bigger takeaways are for you, having spent some more time in and around the women's side of professional golf.
Did you go to LPGA events as a kid in Ohio?
No, I didn't.
Because the LPGA has always, done a great job of marketing itself to places like Dayton and Rochester, New York, and not some of the great metropolises. But I would say what you're describing is exactly what I experienced. Where, for one thing, as a fan, you can talk to the players; they're accessible. The Pro-Am experience with the women is night and day different from the Pro-Am experience. For the starting point you can tell the women are glad that you are there paying attention to them. That's not a cliche. I mean, it is a cliche, but it's a cliche born in truth.
We feel that even from the media side, right? There's just a sense of, they're I don't know, it sounds cheesy, but you feel an appreciation for, like, oh, you're here covering the tournament, like, thank you. And I don't know, you can't help but feel a little better.
Sure.
Receiving that, you
know?
Who
doesn't want to feel appreciated?
Right.
Annika said she would call yesterday at high noon. At high noon, that phone rang. Yeah. Because first of all, that's her personality type. But also, it's like, that's the way it's supposed to work, really. We have a commitment to selling the game and selling our interest in the game. And she's long out of the game at this point. And still, the point here was that in any little way, whatever I write up for golf.com about Annika's experience, it's not going to hurt the ratings for the U.S. Women's Senior Open. It's only going to help them, and that's sort of a little bit of our obligation. So you're paying whatever you're paying to play in an LPGA Pro-Am. That's good for the game, and so it's like almost everything in life, and you kindly noted this earlier in your remarks that, I try to see golf in the context of life in general, but really like the starting point for my own life is the gratitude gene. Can you believe how, like when I say we're lucky enough to belong to a club that has a swimming pool, we're lucky enough to belong to a club that has a swimming pool.
Yeah.
It's like if you lose track of how lucky you are, you lose track of the whole thing. Yeah. So I think what's hugely appealing about the LPGA Tour is they haven't lost the gratitude gene. And I think that's in every walk of life. So I was interviewing a PGA Tour player, not well known, and I said, "Oh, well, can I follow up with you?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Oh, well, how would you like me to do that?" He said, "Well, here's my email address. Let's see how that goes, and then we'll see where we go from there." I'm like, holy fuck. Okay, but the chance of me writing to you are 0. Now, maybe this guy thinks he's more in demand than he is. I don't know. But the point here is that you can tell in life anybody who's connected to a sense of gratitude or not. Yeah. And I think in general, I would say more than I think, we know when we're in the presence. We went out for breakfast earlier. This lovely server that we had, she was making an effort with us. Not because she wanted a tip, because I don't know. It's a million different things, including the fact is she doesn't have a job if people like you and I don't come into her restaurant in the first place. Sure. So it's just like I'm looking for that gratitude gene in my own life every day. I try to look for it all day, every day, and no one can, but you try.
Well, I think this is another good segue, if you don't mind. Off camera, we talked a little bit about Scotty Scheffler, and I think Scotty is somebody that I have really a growing appreciation and fondness for in professional golf. Not only does his great play speak for itself, but certainly, his comments before the Open Championship this year, I find him a very interesting person, and I was so fascinated with those comments he made about just fulfillment and how quickly and fleeting winning golf tournaments is in his search for a deeper meaning. I struggled to think of a golfer, a pro athlete that has said something that has really just stuck with me the way those comments did. And I wanted to kind of tie it. This is a long setup for some questions, but in your book, you spend a lot of time with Arnold Palmer, talking about Arnold Palmer. On page 201, you quote Arnold Palmer as saying to you, this is Arnold saying to you, "I lost the edge." And this was after he won the 1960 U.S. Open at Cherry Hills. And you go on in the book, these are your words, musing about that. He had reached a mountaintop and found that his desire was marginally less intense. And when I read that passage on Arnold Palmer, I immediately went to Scotty Scheffler. And I guess let's start here. What do you make of Scotty Scheffler? What did you make about the famous press conference prior to the Open Championship? How do you interpret Scotty Scheffler?
Yeah, I was fascinated by that too. And, like you wouldn't necessarily say that Scotty Scheffler is a fascinating person. Like, I don't know who might, any sort of like deep philosopher type person, but it's a very significant but. He is fascinating in actual fact, yes, because he's figured out this gift of simplicity. Yeah, like we talked about this earlier at breakfast, like, or maybe we didn't, but it comes up in my mind often. Like, let's say whatever you're feeling is about LIV. I don't think LIV's done anything to help make professional golf a better game. His starting point with LIV is they didn't have to accept the money. Now, the Saudis offered the money. Greg Norman started the league. He found these Saudi backers. Let's say everybody said no. Let's say Phil Mickelson, Dustin Johnson, and Brooks Koepka, and Bryson DeChambeau, and Charlie Howell, and the rest of them, let's just say they said no. Well, then you'd really have some sort of minor league that nobody would pay attention to. So in other words, he got it down to the essence of the thing. So I admire that quality in a person that can get it down to the essence of the thing. Now, I don't know if I have this correct, but go ahead. Are you okay?
Yeah, no, please.
But when Scheffler and I we're just kind of, it was the pandemic Masters. And so there was nobody out there. And I barely knew who Scheffler was. And we were walking toward the first tee together. Just so happened. We were like in lockstep. I said, how do you like this? How do you like this? I either said, how do you like this golf course or how do you like this tournament? He said, yeah, I wouldn't know. I never played it before. I don't know if he was referring to the tournament or the golf course.
Yeah.
But one or the other. He said, yeah, I don't know. But it was just like so natural. He was like, he wasn't like, you're supposed to be a golf writer and you don't know. You know, he was just so unassuming about it. And then one night I asked him, I said, well, you grew up in New Jersey and then you moved to Texas, or you're more of a Bruce guy or a Willie Nelson guy. He's like, wow, that's a good question. I'm going to have to think about that and get back to you. So in other words, like he's engaged in the world. And then, you know, as much as I love the tournament remarks he made before the British Open, the remarks he made afterwards about the Chipotle. Did you follow this at all?
Well, refresh me.
On the after he won, he's talking about the level of fame that he has. Well, here, so he says, well, there's one Chipotle he goes to, and it's loaded with golf people, and he's going to get bombarded with questions. But there's another Chipotle that he goes to where nobody knows him at all. And my friend Neil Oxman brought Tom Watson. Well, everyone knows who Tom Watson is. Tom Watson has a very close friend named Neil Oxman, who's a close friend of mine. Neil caddied for Watson for years. And Watson came to Philadelphia, where Neil and I both live. And they toured. They went to Valley Forge National Park and Independence Hall. Here's one of the greatest golfers in history, and he spent several days in Philadelphia. And Neil said, not a single person recognized Tom Watson. So the point, one of the points here, and I think Scheffler understands this, is they're very good at golf. It's so inconsequential as to be immeasurable. And I would say the same thing of, almost every professional athlete. But if you love golf, it's very cool to see anybody do anything better than anybody else. And it's also very cool, and this is true for, whether it's Rory McIlroy, Max Homa, or you or I, to try to do your best at this difficult thing. We're drawn to that.
Yeah.
So I guess what Scheffler was saying in those pre-open remarks is, let's not get carried away with ourselves here. And he captures that.
Well, and I think that's kind of, I don't know, I'm probably reading too much into what Arnold, just to tie it back to that Arnold Palmer anecdote, but about him, as you say, reaching the mountaintop, and once you achieve what there is to be achieved in your profession, right? I think it is very natural to lose an edge, to wonder, okay, well, what's next? Where do I go from here? And so I think, Arnold was very open with you about certainly losing something competitively. And I don't know, I just think it's really interesting with Scotty. He seems to have reached that same point, but because of his grounding in family and faith, and that's really what matters to him. And I will say too, it seems like he just enjoys the process of practicing and playing golf. It seems like he might not lose that edge. I don't know. It's just two different humans kind of at the same point and seeing a little bit different reaction in them.
Yeah. Now, Arnold, a lot of your listeners probably wouldn't know this because we're so accustomed to thinking about the four majors. But Arnold was born in 29 and sort of came of golf age, let's say in the late 30s and into the 40s. His father was a course superintendent and a pro at Latrobe in Western Pennsylvania. And there was one major. There was the U.S. Open. Everything else was just a tournament. So he grew up with this idea of like, wow, if you win the U.S. Open, you've achieved everything a person could achieve. He won that U.S. Open in 1960. He'd already won 2 Masters by that point. He was like, he was done. In a sense, he was done. And in part was, he had a lot of close calls in U.S. Opens after that. And what he was describing to me was that you could never really get the car in 5th gear when he most needed to close it out. Something Tiger really never lost. Tiger never lost that need to steamroll the competition. But Arnold was describing that he had. Now, to Arnold's great good fortune, he's such a people person that he got a lot of life fulfillment by waking up every day and being Arnold Palmer.
Yeah.
And I used to have a photograph in your. Do you guys still have that house in Jacksonville Beach?
We don't, but all that stuff is in a storage unit. So that photo.
Describe to folks what the house was and what the Arnold.
Well,
was.
we called it the Kill House in homage to Tiger Woods and where he used to do some of his Navy SEAL training. But yeah, it was a bachelor pad that was part studio. Solly and I lived there for brief amounts of time, but the walls were just decorated with all kinds of golf memorabilia and pictures. And the picture you're referring to, I forget who snapped it. DJ has it, but it's Arnold Palmer leaving. I don't know if he's home in Latrobe or down at Bay Hill, but it's early in the morning. He's with his dog, and he just looks like he looks so totally normal and not Arnold Palmer, the king. And I just think it's a beautiful picture, kind of capturing the man.
Yeah. Without
all of the glitz and glam and what he himself built himself up to be.
Yeah, well, right. It was that photograph was, I'm almost certain, was taken at Bay Hill coming out of his condo because I recognize it because he lived very modestly. Arnold did. I mean, he was a very wealthy man. He had a modest home in Latrobe, a modest condominium in Bay Hill, and then a modest casita out in Palm Springs. He had a jet. That was his one big extravagance. He was a great pilot. I love that photograph because you can see how totally comfortable he is with being Arnold Palmer.
Yeah.
Just being himself really is probably another way of saying it. But Arnold was very fortunate that when his playing days were over, he was able to find a lot of life fulfillment in the energy that he got from the public. And Nicklaus was able to sort of find the same thing in designing golf courses. Watson probably had his own thing. Got deeply engaged in political discourse, and I worry about Tiger and whether there is another thing for him. And I mean, it's a really weird to think that Tiger Woods is one of the most famous people in the world. There can't be more than 100 or so people, or you have the Pope, or you have people.
Certainly, I would put him top 100. I would think.
Yeah, he's a very famous person, and yet day after day after day, you have no idea what Tiger Woods is doing. Occasionally he goes out and watches Charlie play a golf tournament, and then you don't see him for weeks on end. The Ryder Cup's coming up. You don't hear him in connection. In golf, it's his thing. So, I would say, I don't know why I'm worried about Tiger Woods, because I don't think he worries about me, but Scheffler, just to go back to him for a second, for those who don't know, everyone who listens to this would know the name Ben Hogan and almost certainly know the name Sam Snead. And Byron Nelson, all born in the same year, I think 1912, and all had very different paths through their Hall of Fame careers. And Byron Nelson's thing was like, make enough money to buy this ranch in Texas and then sort of go away. And that's what he did. And I could see Scottie Scheffler doing the exact same thing. Like, it's not so much the money for him, it's like, but it'll be a little bit more like the Arnold thing, but maybe on his own terms. So whether winning the career Grand Slam is a goal for him or not, I could just imagine him saying, our eldest child is getting into sports or grade school, whatever it might be. I want to be there for this, that, and the other thing. And I don't want to devote myself to tournament golf as I have, and walking away and being very content in doing it. And he sort of predicts that in those comments.
Yeah. I totally agree with you on that.
So this movie that I mentioned to you a second ago, it's called, the movie that Christine and Ian and I saw last night that I would definitely recommend to the listenership is Don't Let's Go to the Dogs Tonight.
Huh.
And it's set in Rhodesia.
It's a new movie, though?
It's a new movie. It's set in Rhodesia in 1980 when Rhodesia was turning into Zimbabwe. And one of my favorite people in golf is Nick Price, whom I've just been drawn to for any number of reasons. Anybody who knows Nick Price is, Nick Price is the real deal. And he grew up in Rhodesia. So I wrote to him and told him about that we liked the movie last night. And Nick just wrote back, hey, Michael, I read the book years ago. Fairly truthful, but some good bullshit in there too. So I was at Tulsa. This is the PGA Championship that Justin Thomas won. The one that was going to be at Trump, and they moved it to Tulsa.
Yeah.
What's the name of that course in Tulsa?
Southern Hills?
Southern Hills.
Yeah.
Good man. So there's an area where they park the carts, like subterranean kind of thing. And there's a men's room there. This is crass, but I've started going down this road. And Nick won a PGA championship there. So I happened to be wandering through there. That's kind of one of my things is sort of poking around. And I used that facility. It was a very clean, appropriate facility. And they had a photograph of Nick Price, who won a PGA championship, in this head. And so, of course, I sent a photograph of the toilet and the photograph of Nick to Nick. And Nick wrote back right away. He said, "In the crapper where I belong." So anyway, that generation of golfers, first of all, they figured things out for themselves. Here's a guy, he's in the Hall of Fame. Here he's corresponding with, just some random writer that he's met along the way. Nick probably thinks of me first and foremost as a caddy because, when we first met, that's what I would have been. But like, I can't imagine really a golfer on tour doing that today.
There seems to be more of a self-deprecating nature with some of those older players, and maybe that's just I don't know the new players as well as we got to know the older players, but
yeah. I mean, I don't think that, Jack, I've been lucky enough to interview him a lot over the years.
Jack's self-deprecating.
Jack is definitely not self-deprecating. Once I was in his office and he said, "Well, how old is," this is years ago. He said, "Well, how old is," not so many years ago, as you'll find out from this story. He said, "Well, how old is Rory McIlroy?" And I said, I think he's about 28. And Big Jack says, "About 28?" In other words, his thing is precision. So then he says, "Hey Siri, how old is Rory?" And of course, Siri answers, the Irish golfer. Oh, fuck. Please turn that off. But no, self-deprecation was definitely not his thing, nor really for Arnold, but for Trevino, I think it was. For Billy Casper, I think it was. For Nick, I think it was. I think their personality types came through their golf more. And I think
that's a beautiful way to put it. I think that's honestly, I've been searching for a simple way to explain that thought. I think you've nailed it with that. All right, before we lose track of Scotty and Arnold and the mountaintop, I wanted to ask you, have you experienced that feeling of being at the height of your craft of writing? Have you reached a mountaintop? Does that compute at all?
Totally the opposite. I feel like a rank beginner. I know this is not a literal truth. I'm not being disingenuous enough to say this. I'm just saying how I feel. I feel like a rank beginner. Annika called right at noon yesterday. I was nervous. The questions were inept. I'm a bad interviewer. I'm a bad reporter. I'm a bad writer. And I'm going to keep trying to get better. I just find it a very helpful way to keep trying this thing. The only thing I'm really pissed off about is being 65 and, wishing that I had lots more time to try to get better at this craft. I'm not talking about golf. I'm talking about writing. That means the world to me. And that's why I love this book, Joyride by Susan Orlean so much. That's really that's what her whole journey is about. Can you become a better reporter? Can you become a more empathetic listener? Can you convey what the person is like, what the experience was like to be with the person, why it matters in a better way, no matter what you're writing? Okay,
so this leads me to, you have a quote in the book by Ben Hogan, page 32, and it's in the middle of a story relaying the journey of Lucas Glover in his putting. But you quote Ben Hogan as saying, "I am the sole judge of my own standards." And I was really curious what that means to you as a writer. And are you just always tough on yourself? How do you go about, what does that quote mean to you?
What does that quote mean to you?
Well, it struck me right in the forehead. I mean, it's a quote you read and I immediately reach for the highlighter, and I think there is so much truth, and it is a much needed reminder for me that I need to do a better job of becoming that sole judge of my standards, and maybe to quit listening to outside voices. And I find a lot of truth in it. I think I can be my toughest critic in all walks of life. And I think the difficulty is sussing out when that's useful and when that's just overly burdensome.
Very, very well said. I think it's much tougher for you. Sounds like, I think you still have another thought you're trying to get out.
No.
I think it's much harder for your generation than mine and the generation that preceded me, because you're so bombarded with images. You know, someone goes on vacation and they snap their pictures and they put it on Twitter and they put it on Instagram, and everyone's judging it. Yeah, it looks like a nice vacation. I've seen better. You know, there's always a fuck you. I don't give a fuck what your vacation was like. And I'm not putting my vacation on Twitter in the first place for you to judge it anyhow. I either enjoyed the vacation or I didn't, or some aspects I did. And by the way, that's life anyhow. It's never some perfect joyride, to use that word again. It's like there's good and bad in everything. Nothing goes perfectly. But your generation has so much pressure on it in this achievement of what somebody else tells you is the ideal. And like, now, I know this is a thing in the world now, and I'm ignoring it, and it's costing me. But like we were talking at breakfast today, you know, how many YouTube subscribers you have, how many Instagram people click on, click, and everyone's counting the numbers all the time. But it's a killer if you let it kill it. Now, the golfer.
Were you ever tempted to join social media, or was it immediately like, what the hell is this? Why would I? Well,
it sort of crept up. So it wasn't any immediate anything, but I never saw one positive thing that was coming out of it. The one positive development, you know, since, let's say, you know, I wrote my first book on a typewriter. So, you know, from that transition from typewriter to where we are is email. I love email.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I love this movie that Judd Apatow made. I'm just blanking on the name. But if anybody, whoops, I think I'm getting cramp. And I definitely, Funny People. The book is called Funny People.
Yeah. I think that's the name of the movie too. I have not seen it, unfortunately.
So I wrote an email to Judd Apatow. I totally guessed on his email. An hour later, he would not know me from Adam. It'd be impossible. An hour later, the phone rang.
Yeah.
He was Judd Apatow. We talked for 2 hours about
That's amazing.
Because of email.
Yeah.
Email is a great equalizer.
Yeah.
So I do love email, but all the other stuff, I think that I do not see there are aspects of it that are beneficial. And, you know, breaking news being, you can get addicted to the breaking news too, of course. But I don't want to be totally dismissive. I'm just saying, for what I do in my life, I don't see any benefit to it. Can I just finish one quick thought about Hogan? There's so much in that I'm the sole judge. Now, in a piece of writing, you are the sole judge, and yet you're working with people as well. Of course, your readers, you know, if you had 0 readers, for me, that would be a failure, because I'm trying to connect with readers. So I'm very grateful for every single reader I have, but I'm not trying to write in such a way that the net will just get thrown as broadly as possible. But like, my first reader is our mutual editor, Jofi. I've cracked this joke many times, but I'll share it one more time here. And he once wrote in the margins, Z, flip the page. I can't tell you how bored I am in this section. And now that is somebody else's judgment.
Sure.
But I've decided on my own that I trust Jofi's judgment.
Yeah.
And he has shown enough respect for me to say, you can agree with it or not agree with it. And sometimes I don't agree with it. I have one sentence in one book that's one of my favorite sentences ever. I won't get into the whole thing. Jofi was ready to take it out. I'm like, I think it works. Let's leave it. So that's an example of I'm the sole judge of my own standards. But I think one of the great beauties of golf, and this gets to Hogan's whole life, and I would say Nicklaus's whole life, and lots of people who you admire, and it can be true for you and I every bit as much, is that golf tests honesty. honesty in the sense of like where you are in your own life, what you can do with that golf ball that's sitting there, what you're doing with the number that you're writing down, what you're doing in your match. Like if you and I play a friendly match this afternoon and the ball moves while we're over the hole and we're going to play a match, we're not going to call it because it's ridiculous. It has no, but we're going to tell the other person, well, I just want you to know the ball moved here.
Sure.
And then you're going to say, yeah, well, who cares? Yeah, nobody cares. But in tournament golf, you have to care because
Right.
the rule says that ball can't move. And, it can't move from its original location. I mean, that's a minor example, but whatever it might be. In other words, so that's one level of honesty. Another level of honesty is, what you can do with the ball in that lie. Another level of honesty is what you're going to do to try to get better. And I think we're lucky to have this game that pushes you into honesty in a way that so few things in life do. Because a lot of life is how much can you bullshit the other person?
Oh, that's so.
And it's so boring. And we see
it's
it all.
exhausting.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting.
And one of the things about the long flight is the person next to you, they're usually full of shit. and so we want to, on the highest level, we want to trust the scores. Now we have to trust the scores. If we don't trust the scores as being completely, totally kosher, the whole thing falls apart. That's the starting point. And I just hope, because that's the only word I can use, that this generation understands that as much as preceding generations do. And you learn this over time. Like I know in a high school tournament, we played a rule called lift, clean, and place when you're in a trap or playing golf courses in March and April in Suffolk County on Long Island, and there are pine cones and things around, and they were just trying to make the game a little more user friendly. So you create a local rule; it's totally fine. Lift, clean, and place. So you're in it was in a bunker. Excuse me, I've been
Sure. If it's not raked, you lift it, give yourself a normal lie, and I imagine, go from there.
So I lifted the ball. I swept my foot with the soccer kick, and then I placed my ball, and that was all totally legit. Except for the fact that I placed my ball on the ledge. In other words, I teed it up.
Oh, I see.
I cheated.
Yeah.
And the guy's looking at me from the top of the bunker, my opponent. And it's like, I'm sick to this day. But that's where I learned. I've had people tell me of these things. Or I caddied for, a guy named Peter Teravain in a book called To the Linksland years ago. I won't get into the whole thing, but I nearly cost him a penalty. And I know that this guy, I gave him the wrong ball back. And it was also a lift, clean, and place kind of situation. And he gave me a ball to clean it appropriately. And then I threw the ball back to him. I threw back the raw ball. And I realized that after he was over the ball, that it was not the ball. And that's the requirement of the game. You can't switch balls without telling the other player. It's just a rule of golf. You might say it's a stupid rule. It's not. But whether you think it's a stupid rule or not, that doesn't matter. It is a rule of golf.
Yeah.
And I could tell from Peter's look like he was annoyed. But he was also grateful that I alerted him to it beforehand, because he definitely, had he figured it out later, if the number was different or something, he definitely would have called the penalty on himself, because that's how he went through his life. My friend Mike Donald, exactly the same way.
Yeah.
All his golfing life. It's just like Davis Love, almost every golfer I've gotten to know well. It's like it's so deeply embedded in them. So that's like the most obvious level of honesty as it relates to golf, but it's every level of golf, and it's every level of golfer. And I think Hogan is hitting upon that in his remark.
So when you put a book out into the world, do you read reviews on your books? What's your process for, do you care to gather feedback? How big is that net that you cast, or how do you go about seeking the opinions that you want to seek?
Well,
on your work?
I don't seek the opinions, but when the opinions come to me, I read them eagerly and happily. I've got my email always in my books, and people write to me.
Yeah.
And I write, unless there's something, anti-Semitic or racist or, some vulgar thing in it, which very seldom happens, I always write back. And, here I believe probably have thousands of handwritten letters from over the years. I write back to every one of those people. And those are, I've made some of the best friends of my life through that kind of correspondence. So I guess I am seeking out in the sense that I have my email right in the book. But like on the Amazon, you know, when people write in with reviews, and you know, on this most recent book, there's one-star review, and the guy says, you know, after 50 pages, you know, I was bored out of my mind. I couldn't get through it. It's like I totally respect that. You know, I mean, it's just the nature of reading. There are, you know, that we mentioned earlier, the movie My Dinner with Andre. I know people are bored out of their mind by My Dinner with Andre. I totally get it. But for me, it was life-changing.
Yeah.
Another, you know, artwork that's you know, I'm very close to the play Our Town. The same thing. I know people think it's trite. I think it's deep. So I welcome that. As long as it's an honest opinion, I welcome it.
I know earlier, and I love this thought, you know, I know you intentionally leave room for chance encounters, fleeting moments. There's one of my favorite that you detail in your book. I don't want to ruin it. I think it's best left in the book, but it involves the 2024 Masters and Vern Lundquist and his wife.
Oh, yeah.
Sunday evening as he's exiting the tower there on 16 for the final time. But you have a quote, Michael, there and you say, as you get older, you only become more aware of life's chance opportunities, the fleeting nature of them. And I'm just curious, on a day-to-day basis, how often do you encounter somebody, something that kind of tickles you? You know, maybe it's reading something, maybe it's, you know, the conversation we had at breakfast with the waitress. Do you find that happens daily for you?
If you're open to it and you get out of your house, it'll happen every day of your life.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, here's this, you know, this middle-aged and maybe older woman demonstrating her golf swing to us. It looked like she never hit a golf ball in her life. But for whatever reason, she felt compelled to show us what her golf swing might look like. And maybe that is what her golf swing looks like. And so, you know, we may not remember that forever, but we're going to remember for the rest of the day.
Are you extroverted? Has it always been in your nature to be open to talk to people? Or is it a bit of a, I won't say struggle. What does it come naturally to you? Have you always been like this?
That is such an interesting question, because no, I'm shy and introverted by nature. And I think I got drawn to reporting because it was going to force me to be a person that I wasn't comfortable being. I'm claustrophobic, and which is one of the reasons I much prefer to drive than get in a plane. And I volunteered at Sports Illustrated to write a story about a chess tournament in a maximum security prison in New Jersey, where it was like the opening of Get Smart, if you remember that, where you had to walk through these gates that would open, you'd be in a vestibule that would get you to the next one. There were 3 of them to get in. It was like terrifying for me as a claustrophobic person, and yet you're drawn to these things that challenge you, of course. So no, I've kind of manufactured this life as an extroverted person when it does not come naturally to me at all.
Yeah.
Are you something like that yourself?
Oh my God, I am a introvert, and I mean, I love talking to people, but it drains the battery, and I do need to go reset and just be by myself. It's such, I don't know, I think they're inherently at odds, because I love the random chance encounters. I took a taxi in from the airport last night to my hotel, and I just had the best little conversation with the cab driver about soccer, and he had such an energy about him, right? And I'm always getting on myself and worrying that I'm not doing enough to make myself available for that type of interaction. And I think just because I have a natural, I'm like you, I think I see a lot of myself in you, quite honestly. Shy, I despise bullshit, and I love when I can connect with somebody and go deep on a topic, but I feel like it doesn't always happen that way. So when I do kind of connect with somebody and just feel comfortable kind of just talking about what I consider real things, I love it. It's a joy, but I worry that I don't put myself in those positions often enough.
Well, I can relate to everything you just said, except for one part of it, whereas like for me, those chance encounters and those chance conversations and learning something new absolutely has the effect of charging the battery for me. And I think that's why I get myself in this position where I can learn something from another person.
And I think it does charge it. I think maybe the battery comment was more just, you know, I always joke my personal hell is a cocktail party where I don't know anybody.
Yeah.
And just how draining that makes me feel
Yeah.
at the end of the night.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right. There is an energy that I feel from a random encounter that, you know, you just don't see coming. It's one of the true beauties.
Yeah. My wife doesn't really appreciate this move, but if I'm at that cocktail party and if the house has a library and you go into the library and there's nobody in there, and you pull a book off the shelf and you start reading it, and the person who comes in next and starts a conversation with you, that person will likely be an interesting person.
That's your person. That's a great tip. A few more questions, if you don't mind. You know, you talk about in the book you're 65 years old.
When you say I don't mind, I'd like to interject 1 second. It's like, this is a dream to have an intelligent person interested in what you're trying to do. So thank you.
That's very flattering. I'm 41. I'm going on 42, and you're what, 23 years older, 24 years older than I am. I marvel as I look back on the last 15, 20, 25 years of my life and just the progression and how much of in one sense, how different of a person I am, you know, the accumulation of knowledge and wisdom and life experiences. And I always, then the natural thing is to look ahead 25 years. And I feel like that's kind of where you are right now. And I'm just curious, aging is something that fascinates me. I think more so than ever, I am aware of and in tune with my own mortality. And I'm just curious, Michael, this is a tough question and you can tell me to beat it with this. How has aging been for you? How have you enjoyed it? What has been, as you sit here at 65 and kind of look back, what strikes you, I guess?
I think how I'm going to answer that, I think literally millions and millions of people do the same thing. You know, the single greatest joy is bringing 2 young people into this world as infants, you know, the children that Christine and I raised, and helping them find their way in the world, and then seeing them find their own way in the world, growing deeper in your relationship with your spouse, for those who have a spouse, with your friends, with your parents, with your relatives, trying every day of your life to understand why we're here and what the joys are of this brief amount of time we have on this earth. And I think the aging process is simply becoming more aware of that all the time. And of course, you're literally all the time, including this 2 hours or so that we've been sitting here, you're running out of time all the time.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean, you know, make every second count. It's got to be exciting. It just means, I think, be aware. And by being aware of this passage of time, then you're going to want to use it more effectively. Have a more honest conversation. Be with people you really want to be with. Read something you really want to read. Watch a movie you really want to watch. Play golf with people who, you know, appreciate the game as you do in places where you want to. So the aging process has been eye-opening, really.
Yeah. Can I read you a quote from George Plimpton that you have in the book off page 222? George is quoted as saying, "I had the quick sense of failure, that I had not accorded value, that I had been accorded valuable time and had not made the best of it." And this was another quote that just stops me in my tracks. It opens a vein. If I can be raw and honest, I think the word content and contentedness, if that's the right word for it, I think that I feel like that's the chase for me. And the more I think about it, it feels a lot like golf. And I know this is kind of a tortured metaphor, but I feel like there are certainly times, and just like golf, where you feel good and you feel content and things come naturally and it's great. And then there's times, probably more times, when it can be a little bit of a struggle, and you kind of lose sight of, whether through disappointment, frustrations, whatever it is, it feels like I'm searching, right? I'm searching my way back to feeling that content feeling. I don't know if that resonates at all with you, but that George Plimpton quote about I'd been accorded valuable time and had not made the best of it. He's speaking about an interview that he did with a subject. But I think that, God, if you want to talk about what a life fear of mine is, or something that like is in my head at all times, it's probably that. And so, hearing you talk about aging, like, that just so resonates with me. And as much as I can just try to appreciate and live in the moment, that's kind of my constant daily struggle, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that becomes more of a struggle in this age of constant access through Twitter and all these other things. And can you just sort of actually breathe and take in the moment of where you are? Like, you're not going to play this fabulous golf course, Marion West. Like, I'd rather play Marion West than Marion East for any number of reasons. But it's like, I'm excited for you to see this charming, funky, quirky golf course that nobody talks about, but I know your tastes, and I know you're going to say, yeah, this place is special. I know when I set it up, you say, yeah, that sounds great. I think you're probably right where Plimpton was probably about your age, just a little bit younger when he wrote that sentence. But I think about how advanced Plimpton was in his late 30s when he wrote that sentence. He had this opportunity to get something out of Arnold Palmer. He didn't get anything out of Arnold Palmer, but really, that was on Arnold, not on George. George was trying his best. I would say that is really, at the end of the day, the only thing, the only thing I could offer at 65 to someone who's in his early 40s is there really, really is nothing other than trying your best. And you can't even really try your best all the time, but like, that's what Hogan was saying, is like, he knows when he tried his best.
Yeah.
And there is a deep, like, this book, that's as good as I could write it for then. But the next one, I hope, would be better.
Yeah.
So there, that's a lot of golf and that's a lot of life, that there's so much joy in trying. That really probably summarizes the whole thing. Like, you try to raise your kids, you're expecting your first, you and Kat are expecting your first child. You're trying to raise your kids. You're trying to put on these podcasts. You're trying to get better at golf. You're just trying. And there is so much pleasure in that. And that can sustain you. It has sustained me for 65 years. And I know we're both wood knockers. And I hope it will from here on out.
Well, I really, really appreciate you allowing me into your home, allowing me to ask you all types of questions. You have a section in this book about people that, as you call them, they're knowers. They possess whatever that is that allows them to know golf and life. And I want you to know, Michael, you are on that list for me, and it really is truly a pleasure to get to speak with you, and thank you for sharing the time and the wisdom and the insights.
Well, that is hugely flattering. Thank you.